Greetings and salutations, everyone. Welcome back to the Inn of Planar Crossroads, and as always, welcome back to our Around the Hearth discussions. This time, we will be discussing, well, we're entering PunkTember, so we will be discussing what is punk, because we kind of need to define that if we're going to be moving forward in the chats, because looking online, it's kind of up in the air. A lot of people, put lots of things in front of punk that don't really work with the way the other vernacular works along with it. So that's what we're going to try and define for everybody this time. Let me see. We'll go ahead and do announcements first. I'll do mine so everybody can think about what they want to say. I am Adam L. Spain with the Inn of Planar Crossroads, and we are going to, like I said, be discussing that. And as far as announcements for us, we're getting towards $100 per month is our goal this time. We decided to do financial goal instead of subscriber goal. So financial goal is that. Once we hit that, we'll be doing some cool giveaways and such. Lord willing, that will be the case. Until we reach that, we have that goal and kind of a sub-goal of just finishing out this themed, planned year of stuff. Because we'll see what we want to do. Let me see, this is coming out in September. We'll see what we want to do. Probably around the end of this year, I'll put out a poll, and Abner Studios and I will be discussing on what other themed months we want to incorporate next year. Maybe shift it up a little bit if y'all think so, maybe not. So keep an eye on that. That's mainly what I've got. This is September. Based upon the track record of things, we should be able to start up. We should have started up with our live broadcasts of the art and things, so you should be able to be enjoying that. This is past Adam talking to future you, trying to make sure that that's a thing. I hadn't started yet as of right this second, but Lord willing, I'll be starting up soon. August has been kind of a interesting month as far as things going on and such. It is. My mom has called it the year of change, and she seems to be right for our little bit of area. So that's what I've got. Hopefully that has given Dan enough time to think about what he wants to say.
Thank you, sir. Hello, Dan from Avenue Studios. We live stream on YouTube. Our big thing, starting with PunkTember's After Quest, our main streaming show, is Wednesday, 6:30 p.m. Eastern. We'll be starting off that new campaign in the future, so I don't know what it's like, but I'm excited for it. And of course, we will do the Force Forge, where we build a one-shot based off of these discussions here on Around the Hearth. That's the second Thursday every month, 7 p.m. Eastern, and then we live play it with our supporters at the end of the month on Thursday, 7 p.m. So join us for those, see what we discuss here, and then hop over to our channel and see how we execute it in a one-shot. I think Jacob's taken PunkTember and will be playing in Everyday Heroes, 5th edition variant. So pretty sweet. I'm very excited to see how that goes. I'm excited to talk some punk.
Talk some punk with these punks, huh?
Video. Yeah, I know. I watched
very
a
cool. Yeah,
20 different punks. So
20 different punks.
all the styles. That's great.
Yeah. Okay. Well. Okay. Let me see. Alright, so next, let's see. We'll go to... I don't know if my favorite Canadian wants to say anything yet, so we'll go to Scrat, and then if my favorite Canadian wants to say anything, he can. So, Scrat, what you got?
I'm Scrat from Squirrel Plays. You can find me over on YouTube, and over there I spend most of my time trying to figure out what I want to do on YouTube. I'll figure it out one day. For the most part, I do talk about TTRPGs, and I've actually been doing a couple reviews lately of smaller, lesser-known ones, and there should be another one out by the time this episode goes out. Also talk about things such as world building and character development, but from a writing, more narrative perspective, not so much a TTRPG perspective. I do get to make fun of 5e a lot. I have a bad habit of that. And when I'm lucky, I get to talk about a video game. But it's been a while. But other than that, that's about all I got.
Alright.
It's alright, Watsy asked for it.
Yeah, they kind of did. All right. So, does my favorite Canadian Kane want to say anything before we jump in?
Yeah, I'll make it real quick. Howdy, I'm Kane. I'm Adam's favorite Canadian. I used to do some stuff kind of all over the place, including on this channel, but now I'm mostly just a friend of the Interplater Crossroads. I'm very happy to have time to swing by and be a part of this conversation, and I hope we all have a good time.
Yeah. Sounds good to me. He brings a lot of TTRPG experience because he has played for years, so. And
yeah, it's well over a decade now. I'm getting old.
You know.
That happens.
I tell my kids, you know, you're never old until you hit 100. Once you hit 100, you're old. But not until then.
Yeah.
All right.
That's fair. You're just entering your elf era.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Tell that to my knees.
Oh, in my back.
I'll say, I just had a checkup recently. Turns out I'm pretty old.
You non-long-lived races, man. We gotta move on here. We're moving on to Levi's Spotlight. How about that? Alright, I don't know where Levi is this time. Last time he had some stuff going on at work. I'm not sure if that's the same thing this time, but hopefully not. He did...
Travel in the multiverse.
That's right. Travel in the multiverse. That's what the inn does. And those who patron it. But we're going to continue on his namesake of Levi's Spotlight, and I am going to spotlight somebody that I just found recently. Balsa's Table Tales. BALSA' Table Tales. And they are at 378 subscribers, so go ahead and go over there, comment under one of their videos and stuff. He has mainly focused on Call of Cthulhu content and has done some story times. Yeah, he got me. So he has some story times. I believe they're kind of condensed run-throughs of what happened per session of games that he's ran, and then a few tips and tricks things for it as well. So there we go. That is a shout out this time.
Sweet.
All right. So shout out announcements are done. Shout outs done. That means come on in and join us, travelers. Sit down around the hearth and mingle with us in the comments as we discuss what's punk. And of course, grab your preferred beverage when you do. Skål, Drug!
Ooh, mixing it up, yeah. Connection Bruges.
Alright. So, just to help us out this time, we're gonna set the stage with some notes I made, as well as getting an official, it's air quotes for you guys that are just listening, official, kind of definition for what punk is. So...
clarifying terms in honor of Levi.
Yes. Alright, so to clarify terms, I'll bring this over for y'all. The basic definition for punk is an often aggressive or violent young man, an inexperienced young person, a cowardly or weak young man, punk rocker, young man who is the sexual partner of an older man. I didn't know that one, especially in prison. I didn't know that one, but that's not really what we're talking about, right? We're talking about
something new every day.
Yeah, yeah. We're talking about the punk genre, is what we're really talking about, and the punk subgenre, from looking through different things and notes that I've made, you've got punk is basically rebellion versus an established norm or pushing the boundaries of a norm. There are other things that can kind of creep in along with that, but that's kind of a single thing that I can start to identify as it. And since we're talking about PunkTember, we're going to be talking about different types of punk, like next time is steampunk, the time after that is Tesla punk, and the time after that will be solar punk. It's going to give us a nice range of punks. But there's always that suffix, and then there's the blah, 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 suffix, and then the thing that helps coalesce that around. So you've got this punk and that punk. And a lot of the times it's about aesthetics. A lot of the times it's about those things that are visually there, but not always, because it depends on how deeply you want to dive into it. There is the idea that those aesthetics as well as attitude, those aesthetics and attitude are key to really grabbing a hold of punk and setting it there. There's also the idea of an era and how that influences it, like an era of time, because steampunk has a specific kind of era that it falls into, though you can fast forward it into the future. And then as far as different types of media or something like that, cyberpunk Edge Runners is very much cyberpunk. Another example we'll get into when we get to steampunk is like Wild Wild West. That's very steampunk. You got Tesla Punk, where I'm giving a few spoilers here to sprinkle it in. Tesla Punk has a nice reference from Metropolis, both the movie and the anime. So if you want to check that one out. And then couldn't really find one exactly for Solar Punk, but maybe we'll figure out one as we get there. But you've got all these different types of punk that are available to you to use as a jumping off point, and to use as a thing to help thematically unify your punk attitude. So, I'm going to open it up to you guys. We've got those points kind of set up for us, a few definitions set out there. You guys jump in, see what you're thinking about punky stuff.
Well, like a big part... Go ahead.
No, you're good. Tag your it.
Like a big part of like the punk subgenre is, like Adam said, like it's a lot about like anti-corporatism or anti-establishment, or just sort of like a rebellion against like an established system of, particularly an established system of authority, which you see a lot in the cyberpunk genre. Like basically all of the cyberpunk genre is exclusively depicting a sort of dystopian view of like hyper corporate control. So it's less necessarily prevalent in stuff like steampunk and Tesla punk and the other ones. Yeah. But they definitely show up in a lot of like Atom Punk. I think we talked about briefly before getting on here, is very much like there was a game that just came out that's very Atom Punk, with the robots, the ballerina robots.
Oh, I don't know what you're talking about.
Oh gosh, what's it called?
Something Spark or...
Let's see.
It's gonna
Punk.
With the ballerina robot.
Punk.
Atomic Heart?
Atomic Heart, there it is. It's even got atomic in the name.
It's too easy.
But yeah, it's like
interesting. I don't know that one.
Yeah, Atomic Heart's got a ton of stuff in it that's just like it follows a lot of the themes of Atom Punk, where like you have all the bright colors and design philosophies you find in a lot of like 1950s, 1960s era architecture and like deco design, but a lot of the story is about sort of the dark underbelly that exists beneath that, where there's a lot of like weird sort of like transhumanism and like robotic AI self-awareness stuff going on. I haven't played the game, so I don't know if that's entirely accurate, but that definitely was the vibe I got.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. I think that brings up... You got something, Dan, that you were wanting to put out there?
Well, just the only thing I'm thinking about is... It's interesting to hear that with the Atom Punk, and like, I love Bioshock too, which I think...
Oh yeah, that's another incredible example.
Right, I love that. And that does have the punk edginess with the replacing body parts and the Picasso-esque of putting people together. I love that game. those games. But I think, see what you guys think about this. Generally, I think Cyberpunk is the one that is the truest to punk, having been kind of born in that era with, I'm blanking on the magazine stuff that's ended up inspiring Neuromancer and all that stuff. But, and then you had, like, Steampunk came in, and the dude, what book was it? I can't remember that it kind of made Steampunk popular, but said, like, I just put punk on there because I wanted to catch that zeitgeist. So I'm interested, do you guys think with these new ones, Steampunk, Atom Punk, Solar Punk, I saw Deco Punk.
That's not a thing. I don't like that. I don't like
Deco
that.
Punk is literally just a subgenre of diesel punk.
Yes.
Of diesel, okay.
Oh, it's just,
okay. I love
it's so annoying.
It just replaces a bunch of, like, the diesel aesthetics with, like, Art Deco sort of design.
Yeah, and maybe
things.
Yes. And so,
sensibilities.
Right. Oh, that's great. Maybe the thing I'm throwing out to see, do you guys thinking about expectations from players when they're coming, when you say, hey, I'm going to have a steampunk game, are we now, current time, with all the kind of washing and mixing of punk now, that I almost feel it doesn't necessarily have that term unless you say cyberpunk, although you can, like Kane pointed out, those perfect examples. What are the expectations you think players have for fill-in-the-blank punk? Are they expecting the anti-establishment, or is it more that lead word talking about a style and, like Adam said, a lot of times a year or a certain time era that you're trying to hit?
Well, I think you can do it different ways. So, like, cyberpunk, it has to, because of the cyber word in it, start at a certain point and then move forward, and you've got pre-existing ideas and themes and concepts that are going to come in. Like, if you're gonna play cyberpunk, you're gonna have a net. Now, Cyberpunk 2020 and Cyberpunk Red deal with this by having a kind of net crash that happened, and then it's been separated into different intranets that link at very controlled areas to each other, instead of having one centralized net. And so you have net runners that can kind of shift in and get in there and go through the walls and stuff like that. Again, Dan mentioned Neuromancer. There is a reason that book started to really kickstart a cyberpunk type of aesthetic, because it is really good. But
yeah, it's accredited as, like, the sort of like the whole progenitor of the cyberpunk movement, isn't it? It's like where the term Razor Girl comes from.
Yep. Oh, I think it's New Worlds was the magazine with short stories that kind of influenced the author of Neuromancer. So, like, different short stories there had pieces, and he's the one that kind of birthed the actual whole thing that we know.
And getting back to your expectations for punk in games and in media, I think that one of the things to consider is that you have to think about the role that tech is going to play in a society, because that's what's happening in these stories. You've got cyberpunk, or this cyberware, this highly connected world, these body modifications, all these things are very cyberpunky. But body modification is very popular in steampunk as well. You see that with people making up different things in that aesthetic. And that tech is influencing a society. And what you're doing with the punk part of it is pushing against the societal norms with that tech. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's completely against the government or the corporation necessarily and stuff like that, because you can play a corpo in cyberpunk too, as well. So you still have these things go on. So it's more about pushing societal norms with that technology, or with the prefix, because the suffix of punk is about that having that theme added onto the punk attitude, the punk theme.
Now, clarification on and maybe this is something to throw out to everybody, is when you say against societal norms, you're saying within the world setting you're playing in, or something that the players are bringing meta-wise?
theoretically, I might argue you could do both, but I think really the punk part of it is more of a storytelling facet. Like if you take like other steampunk properties like BioShock or Atomic Robo or World of Tomorrow or something like that, or even Wolfenstein. I mean, the establishment you're resisting in Wolfenstein is very obvious.
Right.
The punk part is less the aesthetic is the crazy German Nazi robots. The punk is the killing Nazis part.
Right.
I love it. Yeah, that's interesting. I like that it's the story aspect.
Yeah, or like in BioShock, you do have like the "Would you kindly" thing going on. Like that's like a direct stand-in for like forceful authority, and you're sort of in combat with that mechanic for most of the game, if I'm not mistaken.
Right. It's that story type of thing that's happening in the background that that you don't get until you've played a little bit further, or you play a second time around. That would you kindly.
Mm-hmm.
So, it's pretty... Punk is kind of like you know it when you see it type of situation. It kind of like what we did with the surreal. You know the surreal when you see it type of situation. Something like Dan was looking at that, mentioned that article that I think it was Mustache shared it in the group chat. Where it was.
Yes.
There were things like your normal expectations of steampunk, aetherpunk, which is like Magitech punk, which that's cool. That's another variant that you can have. The idea of using magic as the source of energy for it. There's atom punk. Mm-hmm. But then it would mention stuff like Apocapunk, and I'm like,
yeah, I read that.
What exactly? What societal norm are you rebelling against in the apocalypse? There literally are none. They're literally apocalypse.
Did you see Stone Punk?
I was like, what?
Like,
there's no society.
Stone Age?
Yes.
Yeah, it's like Flintstones. You're just out here like paddle car and your rock Chevy around. Like, I'm not sure what society. Dinosaurs.
Dinosaurs. That's what I was thinking. Like survival of the fittest.
The authority is the food chain. Don't get eaten.
Well, yeah, but see, if you were to be a punk in the food chain, that means you would go against, like, counterculture the food chain. What would you be? A caveman vegan, I guess?
Prehistoric cannibal.
You could go full cannibal or full vegan. I don't know. That'd be kind of just like, I don't know.
I love it. But that's the problem now, where we are now, too, is people just throw punk on there. So that it almost becomes punk is just like, it's kind of a lot of this thing. Stone punk, you know?
So I think, like, really the breakdown becomes, like, the prefix is the aesthetic and the suffix punk is the story. Because that's sort of how you have to break it down. That's how it's used colloquially.
Yeah. I refuse the colloquialism. I will define it by the tech. I reject said colloquialism. But, yes, I get what you're saying.
I gotta wedge the word colloquial in wherever I can. It's not a word I get to use a lot.
That's solid.
I felt like I was using it too much in our chat, so I stopped using it for a little while. But now I can't. Someone else brought it up.
Oh, I'm an enabler.
And we're in cyberpunk.
So I think those are some good points. Let me see where we still got a few minutes before we have to get into final thoughts. So let me see. The key point that we're going with is that, like Kane brought up, that prefix, suffix kind of merging there, and the story, because cyberpunk is talked about like being high-tech, low-life.
Right. So
that's pretty well what the stories are, because if you look at cyberpunk, that's what it is. It's kind of the seedy underbelly of this highly advanced society is having to deal with these things. Even something like, Altered Carbon, they still deal with a lot of that underbelly type of thing. It's almost like a noir, its own type of noir. So you have a lot of detective stories in it. You have a lot of kind of dealing with that side of society. And you have to ask yourself, is that what you're going to do with your game? Going back to, it's like steampunk. Steampunk is not very low life a lot of the time. A lot of the time it's kind of just, it's cool. It's interesting. The punky nature of it doesn't come from it being a low life, dealing with low lives. It comes from it being a counter, something that is counter to the established culture of the time, or a shifting away from a established cultural norm to a new cultural norm, and that transition through that can also fall into that steampunk part of the story. And the steam is the technology that's causing that change, or is influencing that change. And that's how I like to define it. Because I like to do Aether Punk as magical technology influencing, punking out the society. Steam technology, punking out the society. Tesla Punk. Tesla electricity, free or cheap electrical energy, punking out the society. And so on and so forth. So that's how
I'm going to use that in the future. When I don't know, when I'm doing something I know I'm not supposed to be, I'm just going to be like, I'm punking it.
There you go. See, now I'm the enabler.
It's good to share.
Yeah.
All right. Any remarks about, from a literary standpoint, Mr. Writer, Scrat, before we move on to final thoughts?
Other than I'm just not a fan of the cyberpunk genre.
Interesting.
Oh.
I find... Well, let me phrase that a little better. I'm not a fan of what I've seen. It lends itself very well to game mechanics, whether that be tabletop or video game. But like actual world building, it's too much for me. It doesn't make sense to me. It's like I don't. And again, this is what I've been presented with. I find it hard to believe the world got to that point. And the sad part is, every time I argue with somebody about it, it's like, we wouldn't do this, we wouldn't do that, and then I start realizing, dang, we're already there.
Yeah.
And now I'm sad.
Well, see, you're not so much... it's not so much that you don't like cyberpunk, it's that you don't like that we live in one.
There's not enough escapism in it for you.
Yeah. Maybe that's what it is.
It's a little bit too real. I don't know if I like this anymore.
But like, I've been playing this game called The Ascent recently, and it's cyberpunk, and like I said, it lends itself well to video games, because like that's an easy way to explain yourself getting stronger and upgrades and yada yada yada. But like, it's the typical thing. You're at the bottom of the city. There's trash everywhere. Looks like New Orleans. No offense, but
No. It looks like New Orleans. You should be ashamed, New Orleans. Clean that up.
Oh, man. But yeah, there's just like junk everywhere. Everybody's shooting and killing each other, and it's just like,
So it's Chicago.
I can see. Yeah, that's like, I can see things getting this bad, but it wouldn't last this long. Like, it would fall apart, and these are always way far off in the future. So like, it's gotta. I don't see it making it that far, but maybe it could. I don't know. Maybe I'm just taking in bad cyber.
Well, that's a question.
I haven't taken in a whole lot. So.
The ads are just supporting it.
Well, that depends. What cyberpunk have you been exposed to? That would be a question.
I was actually trying to rack my brain as y'all were talking. I was like, man, I was trying to think, have I ever seen anything cyberpunk that wasn't just going against the system? And have I seen or played anything steampunk that was going against the system? Because I don't think two thoughts about the word punk in this. Y'all were talking about that earlier. This is a word for me, like, and we've already discussed that clearly it doesn't mean much because there's a punk everything.
I still reject all those other punks.
Yeah, like when somebody said steampunk, I'm just like, okay, I'm thinking steam engines, slap some gears on something, because that's what everybody seems to do.
Yeah, and I think the only steampunk game I've ever played was that It was really popular for a while, where you were just like fighting airships.
That's pretty cool.
I don't know what the servers look like anymore, but
Air Pirates is definitely very steampunk.
No.
Well, then I would encourage you to check out, as far as cyberpunk recommendations, Cyberpunk Edge Runners really does a good job of presenting the concept of cyberpunk as both aesthetically and in the story. Now, the story was only able to have 13 episodes anyway, so the last bit is a tad bit rushed. They could have used an episode or two to balance it out some, but nothing that harms the entire whole thing.
I mean, it is admittedly an advertisement for Cyberpunk 2077.
Yeah, but it's a dang good advertisement.
It's an excellent advertisement.
It's also perfect for Cyberpunk. Why wouldn't the whole TV show just be one big ad?
Oh my god, I hadn't even thought of that.
Oh no.
How dare you put that in my mind?
Kane's been incepted.
No. I'm falling backwards. I'm exiting the dream.
But
Arcane. Arcane is probably a pretty good example of some steampunk media that's definitely very against the establishment.
That's all Arcane, I guess. But is that steampunk? Or is that more like the magic one you were talking about?
It's a little Aether, a little Steam. There's they got elements of both. There's a lot of sort of clockworky stuff going on.
Arcane was great, and I don't know anything about that game.
Neither do I.
Whatever. Yeah.
Oh, well, that actually leads into my final point. So I think that's a good segue for us to move in. So, since you guys brought it up, I will do my final thought first, and then we'll go from where I'm sitting. We'll go Dan, Kane, and then Scrat, as far as final thoughts. So, my final thought is Arcanum of Steamworks and Magic Obscura. It's on Steam. It's an old, top-down, Baldur's Gate-esque type of game. But it had an interesting way to do it, and the reason I'm bringing it up is because it had both steampunk and magic. But tech didn't like to work around magic, and magic didn't like to work around tech. The reason being, magic shifts and breaks the laws of the universe, and tech needs the laws of the universe to work. So they had steampunk technology and stuff like that, and you actually, like, if you were going to travel on a train, you had to tell them whether you had something magical or you could do magic. And if you could do magic, you weren't allowed on the train, because you were a risk to everybody on the train, because the train has to have real physical laws to work right. The laws of the universe have to work appropriately for the magic, for the steam engine to pull the train and fire to work properly and stuff like that. But the magic could do these crazy, powerful things. And that was desirable for some societies. So you had these different societies. I guess you could term it Aetherpunk meets Steampunk, because there was a kind of punk aspect to that in the whether you wanted to obey that society or not. So if you're playing that in a tabletop game, you could really mix that around. And that's my point. Don't be afraid to mix your punks together, because the punk can be a unifying story kind of idea, and then the tech can be circling around it if you needed to serve your story. So there you go. That's my final thought.
I just love the idea that mages are like classic 80s punk rocker dressed.
I'm super into that.
Yeah,
Punk
right?
wizards.
That sounds amazing.
All
I think it dunked on by a dude with Liberty spikes casting magic missile.
Yeah. Oh, see, and the reason they get
near the train.
The reason they get like tattoos and piercings is because it makes the magic flow. The sigils are the tattoos type of thing, and the piercings are like magical equipment that they've got and stuff like that.
He's got snake bites with like sigilry engraved on them, real small like.
Yes.
That's how he casts magic word or something. Ooh, that's how you can pass. That's how you cast power word kill. You gotta have like Maybe you got to have a tongue piercing for that one.
That got so edgy so fast.
Yeah. It's punk. What do you expect?
I don't know. I just the way you described it was I'm picturing like a 19-year-old going, "You should just like die," and then you should just explode.
What's your power word, brother?
All right, Dan, what you got?
I love that. I am going to do first real quick hit on just when you bring it to the table, make sure everyone's got the expectations. Have that session 0 or that chat with everybody, because you don't know what people's feelings will be when you say whatever it is. So that's a good thing to clarify. And then I will throw out the Great Mustache's suggestion, because I really like this idea. He suggested sound punk as a new, just to add to the long list ever going. But I like the aesthetic idea that it's all based around sound and tech, and he was like asking how important would musicians be, instruments, voice coaches, auto-tuning, and then the whole world being lots of brass and pipes and strings, like the whole design is based around instruments. And then I thought, with the punk, then literally punk music is the punk in sound punk.
Well,
and it's disruptive chords and...
That's one of the ones where I would have disputed with my good friend JP, because I would have said, well, that just sounds like a sub power set inside of another punk. Like,
yeah,
you could do it in any of the punks we've listed. So
yeah, for sure.
Yeah, well, I mean, what punks are not just subgenres of other punks?
Well, there is a key to that, and I do want to... Man, I was going to say that as my final thought. Okay, maybe I'll have 2 final thoughts. Okay. Anyway, I'll cheat. It's my stream. I can do
You're
that.
the boss. You can do it.
Anyway. Okie dokie. Okay, Dan.
And
that's
have
your
fun.
Yeah.
Comment your ideas. What's your Aether/Steampunk mage look like? Comment.
Oh, there you go. Let's see. The comment for this chat is Wizard with Liberty Spikes. That's
Game likes.
Yeah. Oh, and when he casts Chain Lightning, it just literally comes up as his Liberty Spikes.
Oh, yeah.
Out.
Yeah. It's all coming together, baby.
All right, Kane, what's your final thought?
I don't know. I never thought I'd get this far. Play Frostpunk. If you want something that's like super heavy on aesthetics, that doesn't. It's more of like a survival game. You're not. There's a lot of like. There's a lot of like, you gotta stay alive because the world's freezing. There's like a huge steam generator that keeps your colony alive. Like, all the aesthetics are on point. There's a lot of politics. If you don't keep everyone happy, they will literally boil you to death on the steam engine.
There you go.
It's wild, but I think it does an excellent job of like examining a lot of at least the aesthetics of the steampunk genre. I mean, the game is literally called Frostpunk. So I don't know. I think if you, like, this chat gave you an itch to play in the genre a little bit, I think that's definitely right up in there. But also, I'll agree with Dan real quick that you should definitely have a conversation with your party. If you're planning to run a game in this style, you should be asking questions like, is this just an aesthetic thing that we're doing, or like, will it tie directly into how the world works and how the sort of the geopolitical climate exists?
Yeah. Who means? And I'll let that Frostpunk thing slide, because the name it's just the name of a game. It's not necessarily a genre. So
You're just shooting us
It's
down one by one.
I'm not saying that Frostpunk is its own genre. I'm just saying Frostpunk is steampunk but cold. That's all it is.
So it's steampunk in Canada then, right?
Yes.
That's why Kane likes it. It's
I've got water. I've got steam radiators in my apartment right now.
Look at that.
There you go. We live in a punk. We don't just live in a cyberpunk. We live in a steam Tesla solar cyberpunk dystopia.
Hey man, the false self reflects the true self.
That's good.
All right, Scrat. What you got for final thought?
Oh man, kind of farted all those out right before we got here. When you brought me into it, I'm going to start my own new genre called punk, just to make you mad.
Well, then you would just be playing.
Give me the elevator pitch.
Okay, you'd just be playing a normal game then.
It's called going to work.
Yeah, punk is called going to work. That's 100%. It's just a game where you are the corpo.
Oh man.
We're a bunch of wage mages working a magic co.
Working 9 to 5. Casting magic missile. Working 9 to 5. Prestidigitation cleans the toilets. 9 to 5. I don't know.
Hey, man, I like it. Well, I already said, I'm kind of limited on exposure for Cyberpunk, but I ran one or two one-shots that were steampunk, and then the first campaign I did, it wasn't steampunk, but it had a very steampunky faction in it that played some important roles. There was important characters there, and their BBEG actually came from that group of people, so all of his minions and baddies were a little steampunky, but it was still in the 5e universe, or what I managed to hobble together of it. But I feel like, from my little experience, steampunk seems a bit more easier to get into as far as the world. Like, it's easier to suck people into it, and you don't have to hand wave everything. It's like, it's magic. That's how it works. Like, you can put some basic machinery in there, and that's a little more that they can actually grab and hold on to. I mean, not physically taking the game pieces, but they can. You're familiar with machinery and all that, even if you don't know how it actually works. You can't take it apart, but it is more familiar. But you still have that little bit of hand waving you can do. Oh yeah, steam technology totally works. This boat will totally fly.
Sure.
And pistons.
It works for hot air balloons. Why not this galleon?
Never mind the size differential of cabins and
there's a steam engine on the deck of the ship that does stuff. That makes it fly better, more
better. So I am open though for good steampunk games. If anybody's got a recommendation, other than this Arcanum Steamworks Magic Obscura thing I got on my screen right now.
I really wish I could remember the name of that Sky Pirate game now.
Oh. Okay, I remember the thing I was going to say before we go. It's that it was kind of what I was saying already, so it's not technically a new point.
Okay.
It's that all the tech levels, like mixing the tech levels is fine, because all the tech levels, like we're seeing in real life, they kind of end up mixing together. So it's fun to have like a really regimented steampunk game. And it's fun to have a really regimented like Tesla Punk or Atom Punk or Aether Punk game. But in reality, those different things would probably mix together a little bit. We live in a diesel punk, steampunk, Tesla punk, well, kind of Tesla punk, cyberpunk world. So it's fine to throw it all together and see what happens. Like Scrap was saying with his things, you can sprinkle it in there. So, there you go. All right, we better get to our next chat, viewers. So that's going to be on Steampunk. It'll be up. These come up every Tuesday. So there you go. Next Tuesday you can watch steampunk. But thank you for watching What's Punk, and hopefully we have not confused you too much on What's Punk. And if you do play a punk game, you'll have to tell Scrat. So, there we go. As always, have a great day. God bless, and enjoy. Bye.
Guns of Icarus was the name of the game. Bye!
Nice.
This content was made possible by travelers and viewers like you. Thank you.
Okay.
That's a good name.
What'd you say it was?
Guns of Icarus.
Guns of
Okay,
Icarus.
that's pretty solid.
Nice.
Let me check this one.